It looks like Samsung's Galaxy S26 series is shaping up to be one of the most predictable flagship launches in years, and not necessarily in a good way. The latest leaks from Korea basically confirm that the S26 Pro and S26 Ultra will offer almost no major camera upgrades over last year's models. Yep, you heard that right. Despite the new names, new hype, and new price tags, the hardware behind those cameras is practically unchanged. Now, before we jump to conclusions, let's unpack what's going on here, because it's not as simple as Samsung got lazy. First off, the rebranding. The standard vanilla Galaxy S25 is reportedly being replaced by something called the Galaxy S26 Pro, and many people assumed that meant Samsung was planning something special, maybe a jump in camera tech, or at least a significant new feature to justify the Pro label. But according to the latest supply chain leaks, that's not happening. The S26 Pro will stick with the same triple rear camera setup we saw on the S25, a 50-megapixel main sensor, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 10-megapixel telephoto with 3x optical zoom. Up front, there's still a 12-megapixel selfie camera, unchanged. If that sounds familiar, that's because it's literally the same camera system as the S25. And the S26 Ultra isn't breaking new ground either. Samsung's top-tier model will reportedly reuse the S25 Ultra's camera setup exactly as it is, a 200-megapixel main sensor, two 50-megapixel shooters, and a 10-megapixel lens, plus the same 12-megapixel selfie camera. The only real hardware difference comes with the S26 Edge, which will replace the S25 Edge's 12-megapixel ultra-wide with a more powerful 50-megapixel sensor. That's a meaningful bump in resolution, but even then, there's no new telephoto camera, which many had hoped for. So what's the point of upgrading if the cameras haven't changed? That's the big question a lot of Samsung fans are asking right now. And it's a fair one. After all, camera improvements are usually the headline feature of any flagship phone. But here's where things get a bit more nuanced. Megapixels aren't everything. Just because the numbers on paper haven't changed doesn't mean the experience won't improve. Rumors suggest that Samsung is switching out the main 50-megapixel ISOCELL GN3 sensor in the S26 Pro for a newer sensor, still 50 megapixels, but likely with better light sensitivity, faster autofocus, and improved detail capture. That could translate into real-world photo quality gains, even if the spec sheet looks identical. And we can't ignore software. Samsung invests heavily in computational photography, and every new generation brings better image processing, smarter HDR, and improved AI scene recognition. So while the hardware might feel familiar, the results might not. Think of it like upgrading the engine inside a car without changing how it looks. The performance boost is still real. There are some interesting design and feature changes coming that could make the S26 series worth watching. The S26 Ultra, for example, is expected to have more rounded corners, a subtle but potentially big shift in how the phone feels in hand. And perhaps more intriguing is a rumored privacy display feature which could let you control viewing angles or obscure sensitive content, something we haven't really seen on mainstream phones before. Meanwhile, the S26 Edge might also get a larger battery than its predecessor. It may not be the dramatic increase some early leaks hinted at, but it should improve endurance, a key upgrade for a phone that's meant to sit between the Pro and Ultra in Samsung's lineup. Still, if we're being honest, the S26 Pro looks like the most modest of the bunch. It's shaping up to be more of an S25s than a true next-generation leap. Samsung might be leaning on that new Pro branding more as a marketing tool than a sign of big innovation. So where does that leave us? If you were hoping for a dramatic leap in camera hardware, the Galaxy S26 lineup might not deliver. Samsung seems to be taking an if it isn't broken, don't fix it approach, refining what's already there rather than reinventing it. That could disappoint those who expect bold new hardware each year, especially with rivals like Google and Xiaomi pushing the envelope. But there's also reason for cautious optimism. Between potential sensor upgrades, smarter image processing, and new features like privacy display, Samsung might still deliver meaningful improvements where it counts, even if they're not obvious from a spec sheet. At the end of the day, the Galaxy S26 series looks like it's going to be evolutionary, not revolutionary. Whether that's enough depends on how much you care about bleeding-edge hardware versus refined real-world performance. If you skip the S25, the S26 might be worth a look, especially the Edge, which seems to be getting the most noticeable camera upgrade. But if you already own a Galaxy S25 Ultra, you might want to hold off unless Samsung surprises us with major software leaps or that new sensor really delivers. Because right now, the message is clear. The Galaxy S26 series is all about refinement, not reinvention. And that might be enough. Or it might not be, depending on what you're looking for in your next flagship. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.